Good morning. The committee will come to order. It is an honor to be leading the member day for the first time as chairman of this committee. And as all of you know, I'm a proud Marine Corps veteran, and it's a privilege to lead the committee on behalf of my fellow brothers and sisters at arms. As I said before, this is not a duty I take lightly. All of us owe a debt to those men and women who served and those who continue to serve our country. Over the past few years, we have made great bipartisan improvements to make it easier for our veterans and their families. This is a trend I plan to continue. But achieving real success for the men and women who raise their right hand and serve our nation is not a mission that can be done alone. We must work together to address the issues that affect the veterans in all 50 states and territories. They deserve no less. Members' Day gives us the opportunity to hear from members that represent those veterans, whether on our committee or not, about the issues affecting them and their districts. Every member of Congress has veterans in their district, and we want to ensure every veteran's voice is heard as we work to improve the delivery of care and services of our veterans. A veteran in Washington may not face the same obstacles as a veteran in South Carolina. That's why I'm excited to see so many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle participating in today's hearing. Your advocacy on behalf of our veterans and their families and survivors is vitally important. And we appreciate you taking the time to come to the committee today and share your ideas. I'm eager to hear from you about the solutions and proposals you have to ensure our veterans have the opportunity to live out the American dream. Right now, the ranking member is not here, but when he does get here, we will recognize him for his opening statement. But right now, we do want to recognize the first panel, which testifying before us today, on who we have. We have Derek Kelmer from Washington, and Representative Pat Ryan from New York, and Keith Self, who's a part of the committee, will also be testifying. So Representative Kelmer, you are recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the time, appreciate you taking the time to listen to members. I wanted to take this time to discuss a bill that I've introduced called the Housing America's Veterans and Ensuring They Have Needed Services Act, or as we call it, the Havens Act. I've been honored to partner with our colleague from South Carolina, Representative Mace, in leading this bipartisan effort. We've got a serious problem with veteran homelessness in our country. Right now, over 37,000 of our brave veterans are without a home. Despite veterans only constituting about 6% of our total population, they make up 8% of those experiencing homelessness. And it's tough to see these folks, many of whom are battling challenges including things like post-traumatic stress disorder or social isolation or substance abuse, also not having a roof over their heads. Obviously, the pandemic only exacerbated these issues, revealing that our system for assisting homeless veterans often falls short, and that's where our Havens Act steps in. This legislation proposes a shift away from some of the traditional congregate care facilities, which unfortunately during the pandemic were proved to be disease hotspots, towards the creation of tiny home villages. It's not just about the homes. These villages will also provide essential wraparound services on site, including counseling and job training and financial management. This model has proved to be successful. Residents gain a sense of security and independence, while the available services cultivate a caring community, equipping individuals with the support that they need to secure permanent housing. We've seen this model work in areas throughout the country. Importantly, these communities see fewer residents return to homelessness than conventional shelters as well. So the Havens Act calls for a 6-year pilot program through the VA's existing grants and per diem program. We'll allocate 5 grants totaling $10 million each to construct these tiny home villages. And the funding comes from the current GPD budget, filling in its case management gaps and expanding access to crucial resources for veterans. It's not just about housing, it's also about sustainable housing. Preference will be given to grant applicants who use energy-efficient building materials, things like cross-laminated timber. Plus, the Act mandates improved tracking of outcomes for homeless vets, ensuring that we continue to focus on those who may otherwise be overlooked. We want to make sure if this is a pilot program that we actually do the evaluation to make sure that it works. Secretary McDonough said it best when he stated that the term homeless veteran should not exist in our vocabulary. And this bill, our Havens Act, is a leap forward in trying to make that a reality. So I urge the committee's support of this legislation and appreciate you taking the time to hear me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmer. We appreciate that. Mr. Ryan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you in absentia to Ranking Member Takano for providing us with the opportunity to testify today. I also just want to thank and appreciate my colleague, Mr. Kilmer. I couldn't agree more, and certainly have seen similar programs in our district work very effectively. Mr. Chair, as you and all members of the committee develop policies for the 118th Congress, I encourage you to draw from a principle that I learned as a young military officer. I'm sure that you can appreciate, and many others through their service. We have to get resources closest to people on the ground that understand what's happening in the community, that have those relationships, and are able to come in and fill gaps in our current systems. So I have 3 points and ideas that I want to put forward to that end. But I believe that that is where we will close some of these gaps when it comes to transition and employment, mental health and suicide, addiction, and so much more. The first point is fairly straightforward. In my district, which is New York's 18th district, north of New York City and south of Albany, in the Hudson Valley region, we are on the seam between 2 major VA centers in New York City and in Albany, but extremely far from both, and making it very difficult in a rural and ex-urban area to have transit. Last year, veterans in my district faced confusion, uncertainty, frankly, anger and frustration as reforms that were initially instituted as part of the VA Mission Act threatened to close our VA Medical Center at Castle Point. Proudly, I stood with veterans from across the community to say that it's unacceptable that we would lose this facility, particularly given that that would mean folks that are already often driving an hour plus would now have to drive 2+ hours to get the care that they need as part of our VA system. This at a time that we're seeing population actually increase and more veterans come to the region north of New York City. As I know you agree, as well as the ranking member, our veterans deserve to know that the care they receive at Castle Point in the Hudson Valley will be there not only tomorrow and next month, but in the years to come, so that they can have that peace of mind. Second point on getting resources closest to the ground and to those that can solve the problems, I want to draw your attention to a program that was actually started in New York State government by one of our former colleagues, Lee Zeldin. When he was a state senator, he started something called the Private First Class Joseph P. Dwyer Veteran Peer-to-Peer Support Program. It started as a local initiative in New York, in Long Island in 2012. Over the last decade plus, it has grown and thrived. When I was a county executive in my home county of Ulster County, I fought to bring this program and expand it to my region, and successfully secured state funds to do so. This is an exact example of a program that plugs the gaps, offers peer-to-peer counseling for veterans suffering from PTSD or TBI, and any other reintegration issues. I encourage the committee to now look at the federal level at legislation to expand what has been a successful program now statewide, federally, through the PFC Joseph P. Dwyer Peer Support Program Act, which has been introduced now and is working its way through the committee with bipartisan support. This is actually run by a group that I know well of fellow veterans at the Hudson Valley National Center for Veteran Reintegration. These are all veterans themselves that pour their heart and their soul into taking care of veterans and filling the gaps. And we have seen firsthand, and we don't have time to share the stories, but moving stories of saving lives through this outreach and this grassroots initiative. So I encourage the committee to move that bill forward as quickly as possible. Finally, I want to commend other similar initiatives that the committee and the Congress has undertaken to really flow funds to these VSOs and other nonprofits and community groups that have shown the ability to innovate, to be creative, to fill these gaps, and to close that sort of last mile to support our veterans. I want to commend the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program proud that one of my counties, Dutchess County, New York, was one of the first grant recipients of that. That has been going extremely well. Commend that program. Would love to see it expanded and continued. And my closing point is these groups need to know that they don't have to fight every year for these funds, that they can plan, that our veterans will have the support. And so I'm out of time. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you and the ranking member's commitment to our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And Mr. Self, before I recognize you, I'm going to recognize the ranking member for an opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Boss, for your courtesy. I don't have much more to say than I really appreciate our annual bipartisan Member Day hearing, and look forward to hearing all of the ideas that we have from both sides of the aisle. And I yield back.
Mr. Self, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Bost and Ranking Member Takano. I do this as a 25-year veteran, and I share an alma mater with my colleague across the aisle, Mr. Ryan. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for the opportunity to address my bill, the U.S. Congressman Sam Johnson Memorial VA Clinic Act. This bill would rename the VA outpatient clinic located in Plano, Texas, after Congressman Johnson. It is an honor to follow in his footsteps in Texas Congressional District 3, and I'm honored to present this today. Prior to his 27 years as a congressman, Sam Johnson was a member of the U.S. Air Force for 29 years, where he served as director of the Air Force Fighter Weapons School and flew the F-100 Super Sabre with the Air Force Thunderbirds Precision Flying Demonstration Team. And he was a decorated fighter pilot, 75 combat missions. He was a member of the Thunderbirds as well, and I believe that he flew the slot with the Thunderbirds. While flying over North Vietnam in April 1966, his plane was shot down. He suffered a broken arm and back. He was held as a prisoner of war for nearly 7 years, including a stint at the Hualoa prison known as the Hanoi Hilton. He was part of 11 U.S. prisoners known as the Alcatraz 11, a group of prisoners separated from other captives for their resistance to their captors. He left the service with 2 Silver Stars, 3 Legions of Merit, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Bronze Star Medal, and 2 Purple Hearts. After his release in 1973, he returned home, established a real estate business, but in 1985, he began his service in the Texas House of Representatives until he was elected to this House in 1991. He retired in 2018. During his time in Congress, he sat on the House Ways and Means Committee, and he received the Congressional Patriot Act in 2016. I believe that was the inaugural Congressional Patriot Act. Currently, this bill to rename the VA outpatient clinic in Plano, Texas, has the support of 30 members of the Texas House delegation, both Senators Cornyn and Cruz, and 3 of the largest VSOs in the Lone Star State. Renaming the Plano VA clinic after Congressman Sam Johnson is a fitting and deserved recognition for such an exemplary veteran, public service, and bona fide American hero. Thank you for consideration of this important bill, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
And thank you. And I haven't commented on anybody's bill, but I'm good to hear. But if you didn't serve with Sam Johnson, you missed a golden opportunity to find one of the greatest heroes that this nation has ever known. And he was very humble, and he always had a smile on his face. And but thank you for that, and thank you, this panel. We thank you for being here. It's a day that's kind of hectic, and we have several of our other panels that are coming along, but we're going to wait on them, and we will recess waiting on the next panel. So we are going to go ahead and kind of shift the order around a little bit, and so that the members that are here do have the chance. Representative Crockett, if you would like to come forward, we would be glad to hear your testimony at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I really do appreciate the opportunity to sit here before you today. I want to say, first of all, that I am grateful for all of our service women and men and what they've done for our country. When these individuals complete their service, there are certain things that they should not have to worry about, two of which are critical when transitioning back to society: healthcare and housing. I know Veterans Affairs works hard to provide our service women and men the help they deserve. As the representative for Texas' 30th Congressional District, I represent the Dallas VA Medical Center, an institution that not only treats Dallas veterans, but veterans across the state of Texas and veterans living in surrounding states. I've had the privilege to visit the Dallas VA Center, and I know that the care it provides is second to none. I'm extremely proud of the work that they do to help our veterans. As we all know too well, veterans come back with scars of war. Some of these scars, of course, are invisible, but they demand the same level of medical attention that any physical injury would require. Unfortunately, about a quarter of our veteran population today resides in rural areas. In addition to the inconvenience of driving longer distances to access medical care compared to the rest of their veteran counterparts, rural facilities treating veterans may not have the complete set of resources or care that other more urban settings may provide. That is particularly true when it comes to mental health services. While the VA has provided telehealth services for veterans prior to the pandemic, it appears that the availability of mental health resources via telehealth vary by location and provider. Given that veterans are almost twice as likely to die by suicide than non-veterans, we must make sure that they have access to this particular service. This is especially important for our homeless veterans, who are at an even higher risk. Despite difficulties in accurately accounting for how many persons live without permanent shelter, we are fortunate enough to have a rough underestimate thanks to thousands of volunteers who go out on a single night every other year to perform a point-in-time count. According to the 2022 point-in-time count, over 33,000 veterans are homeless in this country. Most homeless populations do not have reliable access to internet. Even if they did have the technology like a smartphone to access the internet, they also don't have reliable electricity to charge it or adequate means to protect it from weather conditions like rain or snow. This means they can't access telehealth services that they really need. These are men and women who put their lives on the line to protect the American way of life, to protect our freedoms. I say men and women, but let's be honest, these are kids. Fresh out of high school, these kids sign up to serve their country, and all too many bear the high price. I personally believe that all people ought to have a right to permanent shelter. However, I think everyone can agree that if anyone deserves a place to call home, it's our returning veterans. Not only is this unfathomable indignity we are allowing them to endure, but it puts their lives at risk. It should come as no surprise that when you don't know where you're going to lay your head at night, when you don't know when or where you'll have your next shower or next meal, it's harder to get a job. If you remember nothing else today, what I want everyone in this committee room to know is what I want every American to know, is the physical and mental toll that the lack of permanent housing has on our veterans. Homeless veterans were almost twice as likely to die than housed veterans. This committee has to do more. In the cities experiencing acute lack of housing, where so many of our homeless vets live, we do not have to sit idly by. Many of these cities have a VA clinic that are under our jurisdiction. Over the last few years, many individual clinics have gone above and beyond to try to house every veteran they can. We must follow this lead. As an easy start, we could have the VA staff work as service coordinators and advocates for veterans to take advantage of the existing resources. This, of course, means ensuring the VA has sufficient discretionary funding to achieve these goals. Or we could fully lean in and have the VA building housing for veterans with wraparound services to secure employment, treat addiction, and more. The point is, we must do something. This nation owes a debt to our returning service members. This committee is responsible for every veteran struggling with mental health and a lack of permanent housing. I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure that all veterans have access to care that they need and the comfort of a place called home. It's the least that we must do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Crockett. Ms. Ramirez, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Boston, Ranking Member Takano. We're really grateful that you're convening a Members' Day where I get to speak to you about the importance of supporting our student veterans. This critical issue needs your attention now more than ever, as too many of our nation's heroes are not getting the support they need and they deserve. Student veterans often face financial difficulties, academic challenges, mental health issues due to their service in the armed forces, and those issues can become even more harder to deal with without proper support for our veteran population. And it's up to us, all of us in the room today, to ensure that every single student veteran receives the assistance they need so that no one gets left behind. Early this Congress, I was proud to introduce H.R. 1767, the Student Veteran Benefit Restoration Act, which includes Republican-approved amendments to establish an across-the-board process for student veterans to restore their GI Bill education benefits in qualifying instances, such as when a student veteran has been defrauded by an educational institution. In April, this bill passed with bipartisan support during our Economic Opportunity Subcommittee markup. This bill reflects years of bipartisan advocacy led by the members on this committee and the student veteran community, including advocates like Student Veterans of America and Veteran Education Success, who have been unfairly impacted by a long-standing inequity in the law. Our veterans have rightfully earned their GI Bill benefits. Let me repeat that. Our veterans have rightfully earned their GI Bill benefits, and they should rightfully be restored when bad actors have targeted our vets to make a profit off of them. They deserve our support for their academic aspirations, and our bill seeks to provide that support in a meaningful way. And that's why today I urge the committee to continue all efforts to support this crucial legislation and bring H.R. 1767 to the full committee during our next markup to guarantee that my constituent voices, like Carrie, like Christopher, Andy, Brian T., and Brian W., are all heard. I'm committed to advancing this bill forward urgently and have prioritized listening and working across the aisle with my Republican colleagues to make critical compromises to ensure that this bill reflects the committee's bipartisanship commitment to veterans and have earned the support of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, Veterans Education Success, and Student Veterans of America. So what I ask today is that you join me in supporting our student veterans and passing this bill with the Republican-inspired amendments. Let us work together for a brighter future for all our veterans and our nation. And thank you. With that, I yield my time back. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Schreier, you are recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bost, and thank you, Ranking Member Takano, for the opportunity to testify before your committee about the needs of our veterans and how we can better meet them. We have over 500,000 veterans in Washington State, with roughly 50,000 in the 8th District. And I firmly believe that if you devoted your life to serving our country, then it is our responsibility to make sure you receive the best service and care possible. As a physician, I mean that quite literally. Access to care is of utmost importance to me. I was proud to stand with my colleagues last Congress and vote for the honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxics as, or honoring the PACT Act, which is now law. This means that over 3.5 million veterans exposed to toxic substances during their service will get the health care that they deserve. My ask at this point from the committee is oversight. I've heard concerns in my district about how to get enrolled to receive this care. I've heard concerns about whether we have workforce readiness to meet the increase in patient demand. And I know that there's work being done on the ground in my state, including a focus on hiring and the creation of a performance dashboard, which allows for transparency. Patients can see the types of claims newly available to them and the wait times associated. I stand ready to support efforts like this and make this transition as smooth as possible, and I'm happy to work with you. We need to make sure that everyone eligible is covered, and please, please consider me a partner in this effort. Now, it's not just the physical health of veterans that we need to be concerned about. It is also their mental and behavioral health. I've long advocated for increased screenings for veterans as they move through the Transition Assistance Program, or TAP, to look for signs of social isolation, which is a predictor of mental health issues and the potential to end up unhoused. And I want to tell you that I share the concern that my colleague Jasmine Crockett just spoke so beautifully about. I've recently learned that the addition of a spouse at TAP sessions can improve adherence and health outcomes and successes. And I hear from the district often the need for mental and behavioral health support. So whether it's building up our workforce, easing access, or moving care upstream, again, I stand ready to work with you to deliver for our veterans. Another issue that I have come to this committee about several times is about the electronic health record modernization program. The Cerner Go Live started out at Mann Grandstaff VA Medical Center in Spokane, Washington in 2020. I will note that as a physician, I use Cerner in my own capabilities. Now, a satellite of Mann Grandstaff is at the Community-Based Outpatient Clinic, or CBOC, in Wenatchee, Washington, in my district. The CBOC was included as part of this rollout, and it was a disaster. The attempted upgrade of the electronic health record at the VA has gone poorly, and that's understated. A pilot of Cerner, used successfully in the military and in my office, in hospitals and clinics across the country, failed in its rollout at the VA. Orders went unseen, appointments weren't scheduled, the computer system was crashing many times a day, and doctors and nurses were having to devote their time to tech support and navigating the health record instead of serving our veterans. I was very glad to join the chairman and ranking member on their bipartisan proposal, the RESET Act, to include a number of changes to improve issues with patient safety, staff dissatisfaction, and overall management failure since creation in 2018. And I was glad to see the VA itself pause the Go Live to work out the issues that I've noted here. This rollout has endangered our veterans, and I just want to make sure that any future Go Lives anywhere in the country center around lessons learned, including provider training, better tracking of patient outcomes, and making sure that it works well, because our veterans deserve the best. Finally, I just want to uplift the Vietnam-era Veterans Pinning Ceremony. This has been one of the great honors of my time in Congress. We started during the pandemic doing these thanking and welcoming home ceremonies at doorsteps. And I've continued that tradition. It is so special to meet the veterans, to hear their stories, to thank them for their efforts, and to meet their families. So I just want to tell you and commend you on this program. So thank you again, Chairman Bost and Ranking Member Takano, for considering the needs of Washington's 8th District as you continue your work this Congress, and I stand ready to work with you. Yield back.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. And just so you know, in our committee, I think, well, definitely in my home, if children around my grandchildren around my home say the word Cerner, I cringe. It's like a cuss word. So we're going to stand in recess while waiting on other members. Thanks. Yeah. Come out of recess, and I would like to recognize my good friend and colleague, Lou Carrera, who I've traveled the world with, and Representative, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman Bose, first of all, I want to say it's an honor to appear before you as chairman of this Veterans Affairs Committee, one that I served with honor in the past. Thank you for your good work. I'm not going to take a lot of your time, sir. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some good common sense measures that I've worked on. First one, probably for 15 years. When I was chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee in Sacramento, California, as a state senator, one of my goals was to listen to veterans, to ask them, what is it that you need from us as government? Slowly, quietly, but firmly, I started getting a stream of veterans that said, we suffer from PTSD, we don't want those pills, we prefer cannabis. And so throughout the years, I've worked on the VA essentially doing research into what cannabis is good for and what it's not good for. It's not up to Lou or to us to determine what our veterans need or want. It's up to them to tell us what they need. And the vast majority of veterans, in my opinion, are using cannabis. And all my legislation asks for is for the VA to do some research into what is cannabis good for and what is it not good for. We're simply asking the question, and we want the VA to answer the question. That's what H.R. 1003, H.R. 1003 asks to do, essentially mandating that the VA do the research. And I don't like mandates, but we've asked the VA to do this for a number of years now. I get it. There's more important things out there. But this is important for our veterans, and I just ask for your strong consideration, sir, of this legislation. Simple, straightforward. Give the veterans what they want. And Mr. Chairman, my second ask is, of course, another one, which is to honor some of our veterans that served our country with honor, that have been honorably discharged, who are not U.S. citizens. A lot of these veterans come back from battle. I met one of them that was on 10 tours in Afghanistan. Came back with a lot of challenges. He was a green card holder. Of course, what happened to him happens to a lot of veterans. He got in a fight, got his green card pulled, and was deported. So now he lives in another country, Mexico, and the only time he can return is when he dies. Because once you're dead, since you're honorably discharged, you have the right to be buried in a national cemetery. But you can't come back before you die. And our legislation, Takano Correa, will be considered, hopefully by this committee. It's a common sense one. You know, all those that served our country and have been willing to pay the price, many made the ultimate sacrifice and many others have given a lot. We should respect them as well and give them the opportunity to live in this country. Those are my two asks, sir. And if you have any questions, thoughts, more than happy to work on these pieces of legislation, sir.
As always, I know you serve your veterans well, and I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate you coming and giving testimony today, and we thank you for that. And each one of those will definitely be considered, and we'll take everything you've said to note.
Thank you, and just in my, the general here and myself are also working some other legislation, and we hope you'll consider that one. It's not my legislation, but I'll let him tell you a little bit more about it. I'm going to extol the virtues of your leadership. Thank you, General Bergman.
Thank you, Lou. And General, you are recognized for 5 minutes after you just came in.
Fresh off NDAA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of this committee, I am grateful for the opportunity to discuss two of the most pressing issues facing veterans in the committee today. First, private assistance in veteran disability applications and the VA accreditation reform. Earlier this year, I introduced the Plus for Veterans Act, H.R. 1822, along with my dear friend Lou Correa of California and my fellow committee member Nancy Mace of South Carolina. This bipartisan bill will re-implement penalties for unaccredited agents, modernize the VA accreditation system, and protect the right for veterans to seek help from the private market when filing for their disability benefits. As a representative of the VFW stated before the Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs Subcommittee on March 29th of this year, quote, "If a company is able to be accredited or their individuals are able to be accredited, then they are part of the VA oversight, and the VFW would support that." The PLUS Act seeks to accomplish just this, incorporating businesses into VA accreditation so that veterans can be protected and bad actors can be punished. I'm encouraged to hear of the ongoing negotiation among members of the Senate VA committee to build off the PLUS Act and draft their own version. I've received constructive input from veterans, businesses, stakeholders, and certain VSOs that are looking to create the best solution possible for those who served and not just engaged in political grandstanding. However, several points of possible disagreement remain that I feel compelled to speak on. First, any imposed fee caps that an accredited agent may charge must be set at a level designed to protect veterans from abuse, but not at a level that effectively sets the price for the entire market. Veterans should be allowed to choose whatever option they decide that is in their best interest, filing on their own, going through a VSO, or through a private business. Draconian fee caps will only limit the number of choices available to them. Secondly, any solution we consider must avoid creating barriers to entry for companies wishing to assist veterans, both those currently operating in the space as well as any new businesses that may come along with innovative ideas to improve outcomes for our veterans. This is especially relevant when discussing the effective date of legislation and how long it takes VA to approve new accreditation applications. Congress must make sure the VA does its job for veterans and those who want to assist them by improving the accreditation application process and establishing a system for provisional accreditation. Finally, I am concerned of the level of hostility the VA has shown towards private businesses, many of them veteran-owned. These businesses have a long history of successful outcomes and grateful veterans that have chosen to seek their services. My office has recently been made aware of veterans who have been harassed and questioned by federal agents simply for choosing to receive assistance from a private business. While we must identify and punish those entities who try to take advantage of veterans, we cannot tolerate persecution of businesses that are doing the right things for our veterans. Any accreditation reform bill must include measures that would stop a potentially hostile and weaponized VA from going around congressional intent to limit veteran choice and access to private assistance. I look forward to continuing our work in committee to advance effective accreditation reform that protects our veterans and their rights. The second issue is access to psychedelic-assisted therapies. These breakthrough treatments, and I repeat, breakthrough treatments offer an extremely promising opportunity to address the ongoing suicide and mental health epidemic among service members and veterans, with thousands of success stories so far in treating PTSD, depression, and addiction. Last year, I co-founded the Psychedelics Assisted Therapies Caucus, or PATH, caucus with my friend Congressman Lou Correa, with the goal of improving understanding and knowledge of these therapies among members of Congress and their staffs. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to support Congressman Luttrell's amendment to establish a DoD study on psychedelic therapies as part of the NDAA. Today, I am calling for the VA and the House VA Committee to do their part. I'm glad the committee has begun to place a greater focus on these breakthrough therapies, including through the recent Health Subcommittee Roundtable. I'm very grateful to Chairman Bost for attending the recent PATH Caucus briefing, where we heard several Navy SEALs and a couple of Marines share their stories and experiences with psychedelics, the very positive stories. The House VA Committee must now focus on furthering VA research into psychedelics, training mental health professionals in the VA system to utilize these new therapies successfully, and to ensure veterans have access to them once they receive FDA approval. Those who risk their lives in defense of our country deserve positive and fulfilling lives, and the federal government has the responsibility to assist them in their endeavor. Again, I am grateful for the opportunity to speak on these issues today, and I look forward to continuing our work on the House VA Committee under Chairman Boss' leadership to get the best possible outcomes for all of our veterans. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, General, and I do thank you for your leadership on these new programs that hopefully will find a cure for the post-traumatic stress. Thank you. Representative Yakum, welcome to committee, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for giving those of us who are not members of the VA committee the opportunity to present our priority issues to you and to your committee. Veteran care transcends district and party lines. All of us want to ensure the best care for those who risk their lives to defend our freedoms. I've only been in Congress for a few months, but the large number of veterans in crisis is quite alarming. I hosted a veteran town hall in early May, and mental health was the most discussed issue. Veterans said local VA mental health care was disorganized, short-staffed, and plagued by long wait times. In the wake of these jarring reports, I sent an inquiry to the VA Northern Indiana Healthcare System, or VANIX, inquiring about their mental health appointment wait times, staffing, as well as other information. VANIX responded that it has 18 mental health-related vacancies. Mr. Chairman, that's far too many. I'd like to enter both my letter and the response from VANIX into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To put a face on this acute problem and the impact that it has, I want to share the story of one of my constituents, Sergeant Ted Grubbs. Ted served honorably in the Indiana Army National Guard as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2008 and 2009. After returning from duty, he was diagnosed with service-connected complex PTSD and complex TBI. On April 22nd, Ted experienced a severe mental health crisis. He was sitting on his couch and decided to put a pistol into his mouth. Thankfully, Ted put the pistol down, but only after realizing it was the day before his daughter's birthday. Ted did the right thing, and he reached out to a medic he served with. After this incident, everyone, including the VA, acknowledged that Ted required in-person appointments only, but the soonest the VA could get him in person was June 26th, 2 months later. That might as well be forever for a veteran in crisis. Today is June 22nd, so Ted would not have even had his in-person VA appointment as of this date. Fortunately, Ted found more immediate in-person help with an outside specialist. But now, Ted's fighting with the VA because they won't reimburse him since they offered telehealth appointments. Ted feels that the VA failed him, and I can't blame him. I hope that the committee can drill down into this to understand where these shortfalls exist and why. All of Ted's children have served in the armed forces with honor. Ted and his family represent the best of America, and we owe it to him and to his children to fix the VA mental health care system. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Yakum. And also, we hear these stories, and that's why we're here and why we're trying to correct those problems. We want to welcome Representative Spanberg, and thank you for being here before the committee today, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Bost. Thank you, the ranking member, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak this morning, a bill that I care about very, very deeply. In 2019, a 39-year-old veteran, Air Force firefighter, contacted my office about having been denied the VA benefits he had earned. Mike Lesick served as an Air Force firefighter, deploying twice to the Middle East, and after coming home to Powhatan County, he proudly served in his local volunteer fire department as a chief fire inspector at Fort Lee. Mike was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, an aggressive and rare type of cancer that attacks the body's plasma cells. But when he went to the VA for care,
he was told that the VA would not cover treatment costs for his illness because they do not recognize the service connection between military firefighting and deadly diseases like Mike's. However, studies show that these firefighters are more likely to suffer certain diseases and chronic illnesses due to the harsh nature of their work. During fire suppression activities, firefighters inhale carcinogenic toxins. Their turnout gear and firefighting foam also contains high levels of PFAS, which have been linked to various types of cancers. And in fact, Congress recognized these potential harms when we passed the fiscal year 2020 NDAA, which required the Department of Defense to phase out firefighting foam that contains PFAS. Due to these factors, firefighters experience higher rates of cancer than the general U.S. population. And in fact, a 2018 study from the American Association for Cancer Research found that exposed firefighters had roughly twice the risk of developing multiple myeloma precursor diseases as the general population. We know that Mike's service to our country, his devotion to our nation's strength and security, led to his multiple myeloma, and that's what makes the VA denial of his benefits all the more shameful. In March 2021, Mike passed away at 41 years old, leaving behind his wife, Tiffany, and his 3 bright, beautiful daughters. Today, I'll be reintroducing the Michael Lesick Military Firefighters Protection Act for the 3rd time, alongside my colleague, Don Bacon, himself a former U.S. Air Force chief. Our bill would finally recognize the connection between the occupational hazards military firefighters face and these deadly diseases. Last year, Democrats and Republicans voted to pass, and the president signed into law, the Honoring Our PAC Act, which extended health care to 3.5 million veterans. We also passed the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act, which created the presumption that federal firefighters who become disabled by certain cancers contracted the illness on the job. These reforms were the right thing to do, and they were long overdue. And so we need to harness this momentum and ensure that our military firefighters and their family have the same coverage and same presumption. And so today I urge my colleagues and the committee to do the right thing by bringing forward the Michael Lesick Military Firefighters Protection Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I thank you for, as a chairman of the committee, for you giving this testimony, and as a veteran, and as a firefighter, by the way. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sorensen, welcome to the committee, and you are recognized for 5 minutes.
17th Congressional District, and our veterans who call Western Illinois home. Thank you, Chairman Bost and Ranking Member Takano, for allowing me the opportunity to testify here today. We all owe a debt of gratitude to the men and women who served our country honorably. And that means making sure our veterans have access to health care, employment, and housing when they return home. Today, I would especially like to call attention to the importance of ensuring the homes of veterans with disabilities are safe, accessible, and comfortable. I recently introduced a bill with Ranking Member Takano, H.R. 4047, the Autonomy for All Disabled Veterans Act. It would increase financial assistance to veterans and active duty service members for medically necessary home improvements and structural alterations. Specifically, my bill would increase the VA's Home Improvements and Structural Alterations Grants, a program that provides financial assistance to eligible veterans for home modifications to improve their accessibility, such as installing guardrails or lowering sinks and countertops. While the cost of materials and labor has risen by 40% over the past decade, the grant rates have not been updated by Congress since 2009. Currently, the lifetime limit for HISA grant is $6,700 for veterans with service-connected disabilities and $2,000 for all other veterans, especially the elderly with non-service related conditions. Our bill removes the disparity between service and non-service connected conditions and increases the lifetime limit to $10,000 for disabled veterans. It would also index the benefit amount to inflation to keep those rates current. These changes will help ensure that HISA grants more closely match current needs and that we're doing our part to provide veterans with the best quality of life when they return home from service. I look forward to working with this committee and our VSO partners to move this bill forward on behalf of veterans, not only in my district, our state, but our great country. Thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen, for your testimony today. Appreciate that. We will be in recess while waiting on a few other members to show up, and thank you all. So for everyone's attention here, we are back in for just a moment. All other members have contacted us, told us there will be no more ones that will be coming forward to give testimony. We want to thank the ones that were here to give testimony today. And with that, I ask unanimous consent that all members shall have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include any extenuous material. Hearing no objection, because I'm not objecting, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.